Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Hi and welcome to this episode of The Power of Storytelling. I'm Yamini Naidu, and what we're going to look at in this episode is where we can find powerful stories. So where can we go looking to find powerful stories that you can use in business as a leader, as a business owner? I think our biggest challenge, whenever I talk to people about storytelling, one of the first responses I get is people saying, "Oh, I don't have any stories. I don't know how to find stories." I want to just reorient us in this new landscape. Whenever we think of stories, quite often we think of a story as being a really big thing. Some motivational speakers, for example, will share stories around scaling Mount Everest, sailing the world solo. And that's what makes most people think, "Oh, I don't have any stories." The good news with storytelling is you don't need big stories. All you need is everyday stories. There is real power in the everyday, the ordinary. Dropping your kids off to school, shopping in your local hardware store, going out for dinner with your partner. These are everyday experiences that everybody can relate to. And this is what I'm going to unlock for you today, is where we can go to find all those everyday stories. So the very first barrier that I want to dissolve and I want you to get rid of straight away is to think your stories have to be bigger than Ben-Hur. Over 10 years working in business storytelling, I find it's the everyday stories that give my clients mega success. So where shall we go to look? Our first mindset that we have to embrace is stories are everywhere. Stories are everywhere. Because of this video series, what I'm hoping will happen for you is your storytelling radar will go up. You become like the kid in the film Sixth Sense. Have you seen the film? There's a famous line in it. "I see dead people." Sorry, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the film, that pretty much gives it away. You become like that kid, except you don't see dead people. You see stories everywhere. You go out to have a cup of coffee, something happens. You go, "There's a story I can use." You go out and you do some shopping and you experience some amazing customer service. You go, "There's another story I can use." So our first, our mindset, the mindset that we have to embrace is stories are everywhere. The first mindset that we had to embrace was stories don't have to be big. Stories can be every day. And the second mindset is stories can be everywhere. What I want to do next is introduce you then to this idea of a story safari. This is when we go out into life looking for stories. So we're not leaving the room, but we're going to grab a hard hat and some binoculars. And we're going to go on a story quest, on a story safari. We're going to go out into life looking, spotting stories. There's a wonderful quote by Stephen King where he says, "Stories are found things." So we actually go out and find stories. And I'll show you how you can do this fast, you can do this well, and you can do this authentically. So where do we go looking for stories? The first domain, I'm going to talk about domains of storytelling. These are almost like the wells of storytelling that you can go to draw your stories from. They're all different. No domain's better than the other. But the idea of domains causes an explosion of story possibilities. So the very first domain I'm going to introduce you to is the public domain. So how we can go looking for stories in the public domain. Now the public domain covers things like something you might see in the news, something you might watch on social media, a book that you might have read, a film that you might have seen. All these universal experiences that everyone can access from the public domain are potential possibilities for your stories. So I'm going to share an example that'll give us an idea of how you might find a public domain story and then tailor the purpose for your audience. I'm a great Peter Sellers fan. And this is Peter Sellers when he was playing Inspector Clouseau. Just the other day, I was watching him play Inspector Clouseau in Pink Panther, just a little clip on YouTube. And Peter Sellers approaches a man who has a large dog. And he asks the man, "Does your dog bite?" That's my Indian version of a French accent. And the man goes, "No, no, my dog don't bite." Peter Sellers then reaches down and pats the dog. And woof, the dog bites him. Peter Sellers turns to the man and goes, "You said your dog don't bite." And the man replies, "Oh, that not my dog." I share that with you because it shows us how important it is to challenge our assumptions. Now that story is very much from the public domain. If you too are a Peter Sellers fan, you might have watched that movie clip and you can absolutely use that story. So anything that's publicly available, whether it's something about a sporting hero, something happens in the sporting arena, something happens on your favorite TV show, all of these become potential stories that you can use in the public domain. You saw how I used the story from the public domain, and then I chose to land it on a message about challenging assumptions. I'm going to come back in the next episode, in episode 4, on how we can do that well and how you can land a story. But what I want you to really focus on now is how we can go fishing in all these domains of storytelling. So the public domain is our first big well, giant well, that you can start fishing for stories. The next domain I'm going to look at is the professional domain. So professional domain is the experiences you have at work. So stuff might happen at work, customer insights. Your colleagues might share experiences they have had at work. So anything that happens in the professional domain provides really rich opportunities for storytelling as well. So often with business owners, I encourage them to find and use what I call founder stories. So Carolyn Creswell, who's founded Carmen Muesli's, which is hugely popular here in Australia, she often talks about how she had a muesli making job when she was only 18 years old. It was a part-time muesli making job. And the people who were running that little part-time, little concern, they were going to close it down. And Carolyn Creswell was only a student then, but she managed to raise $1,000 and to buy that muesli, that homemaking muesli business from them. And then she transformed it into this multi-billion-dollar company, Carmen's Muesli. So that's a little founder story that comes from the professional domain. The other really rich places for storytelling or for stories in the professional domain is from your customers. We just don't do this enough. So who are your fans? Who are some of your customers who love, enjoy, recommend your products? An industry leader who does this really well is Nordstrom. Nordstrom is a large retail organization in America, and they collect stories from their shop floor, from their employees all the time. A Nordstrom employee is just known colloquially as a Nordy. And Nordstrom, one of their values is outstanding customer service. Outstanding customer service. Now that just sounds like something we'd all do anyway. So they deliberately collect stories from their employees. So an example of a customer who came into a Nordstrom store with a gift that he had bought from Macy's, a competitor. And he asked the Nordstrom employee, the Nordy, he said, "Can you gift wrap this for me?" And the employee promptly did. So that's a wonderful story of outstanding customer service. Another customer came into Nordstrom, bought a business shirt, and asked the staff member, "Can you please iron this for me?" And the staff member ironed the shirt for him. So another wonderful story about customer service. So I want you now to start exploring opportunities in your professional domains. What are some everyday experiences that you've had at work that would make really great stories to share with your team, with your clients? What are some stories that have happened for your clients, for your customers, and use them to start to craft your stories? And what are experiences that your colleagues or suppliers have had around work, around the work that you do? Could be around innovation, could be around customer service. Doesn't matter, but you're able to use the professional domain to find endless rich stories. So we've looked at the public domain, we've looked at the professional domain, and the next domain I want to introduce you to is the personal domain. So personal stories, stuff that happens on holidays, in your family, in your childhood, growing up, with your first love, all of those personal stories can be really rich in business. Now, a couple of things happen to people when I talk about using personal stories. I think, first of all, we get quite frightened. We get scared because we think, ooh, isn't that over-disclosure? You feel vulnerable. I really want you to embrace the difference between the personal domain and the private domain. So as a storyteller, you always decide what is private, what you won't share. So there's so much about me that I won't share. And then the rest of it, around your personal domain, you'll find lots of really rich stories to share. When we talk about personal stories in business, there has to be an appropriate level of self-disclosure. So if there's no self-disclosure, then it's not a story. But if there's too much self-disclosure, then that can be really awkward and uncomfortable for your audience. This is storytelling. It's not group therapy. And remember my definition of business storytelling? Business storytelling is storytelling with a purpose and for results. Storytelling with a purpose and for results. So whenever clients want to share, say, a story about having been through a serious illness, I'll ask them, I say, how does that serve your purpose? And how does it serve your audience? And that helps us decide. Can I reassure you that of all the stories that I've seen used in business, stories from the personal domain are the most powerful. They pack the biggest punch. So while you might think you're taking a big risk when you're using stories from the personal domain, they can deliver great impact for your audience. They can help you really land a message, connect with an audience, and have influence. So what's an example of a story from the personal domain? One of my clients, he was the head of comms in a large organization. And the people who reported, who worked in his organization, they came to him and they said, you know what, we love our leaders, but all our leaders do is they send out emails. We wish our leaders would just talk to us face to face. Now, my client, who was the head of comms, this is a very difficult message for him to convey to the senior leadership team. And he decided to do it through this personal story. A few months ago, I was sent overseas on work. It was such a wonderful break from the routine. I was really excited. And when I was overseas, my wife set up a spare laptop in my house in Melbourne. So every morning via webcam, I could talk and chat to my 2-year-old daughter while she sat in her high chair eating her cereal. And it was such a lovely thing to be able to do that. One day my laptop was shut and it was lying closed on the sofa. And my wife told me that my daughter, she picked up the laptop and hugged it and said, "Daddy." That moved me. And I realized that sometimes in life, you can substitute the real thing, but sometimes only the real thing will do. Every day is...
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.